Hey yo everyone! Do you guys remember Flash games? Back in the day, there were a ton of browser games that people could play for free on their computers, all thanks to the Adobe Flash Player program. While the quality varied highly between different games, the amount of just pure entertainment out there was incredible. And it was free! All you needed was access to the web, which made these games available for virtually anyone with an internet connection. Sadly, Adobe sunsetted the program in 2020, and that portion of video game history has largely faded from the industry's collective memory. But today, I want to talk about those Adobe Flash games, what the heck happened to them, and why they were an important part of video game history. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Aight, let's get it. Alrighty, let's start at the beginning, shall we? Way back in 1996, a time well before Halo or Sackboy or Party Panda 17 or the September 11th terrorist attacks, two developers named Jonathan Gay and Charlie Jackson launched a program called Future Splash Animator to help with PC animation. It took off almost immediately and was soon acquired by Macromedia, who rebranded the software as Macromedia Flash. Then, a few years later in 2005, the name was changed once again to Adobe Flash Player after Macromedia was purchased by, you guessed it, Adobe. From here on out, Adobe would roll out a new version of Adobe Flash Player every 2 to 3 years or so. Soon, the program integrated Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator. Then it introduced more animated motion vectors and updated text and graphical features. All of these tools made Adobe Flash a powerhouse in terms of website design, which, of course, was what it was made for. Unfortunately, all of these immersive, interactive websites usually ended up busted due to a multitude of Adobe Flash problems, particularly with breaking the back button, which resulted in the entire website reloading from the start instead of just going back a click like you'd expect. There's this great article from a website called Build that I'll link below. In the article, it said that Adobe Flash had some other major issues that, understandably, would make it a difficult program to use company-wide. For example, you couldn't use a new version of Flash without first uninstalling the older version, which, of course, was a massive source of headaches. There were also concerns with data privacy, security issues, and overall poor performance. As a result, Adobe Flash wasn't considered the end-all be-all website development program. But where Adobe Flash failed with building immersive, interactive websites, it flourished with building online browser games, which soon took up the name of Flash games. All of the animation tools in the program allowed users to create small browser games that they could post online for other people to play and enjoy. Soon, websites all across the internet would become home to these games. Newgrounds, Miniclip, Armor Games, Congregate, Nitrome, all of these websites became a hotspot for online browser gaming. It's estimated that since 2000, more than 1 million Flash games have been posted online. It was so popular that large corporations even wanted in on the action. Microsoft purchased the website The Village and renamed it the Internet Gaming Zone, while Yahoo bought up ClassicGames.com and rebranded it as Yahoo Games. Heck, even Facebook got in on it when they integrated Flash games into their social media website, most notably with the infamous Farmville game. There were some absolutely great games here too. Off the top of my head, some of the best browser games included Bloons Tower Defense, Stick RPG, Whack Your Boss, Line Rider, Raft Wars, Fancy Pants, Happy Wheels, Skywire, and my personal favorite, Kingdom Rush, which has now become its own fully fleshed out franchise. So even though a lot of these games are relatively simple and used a program that wasn't exactly designed for game development, they have found incredible success and, in some cases, are still going today. Of course, not all of these games were super great. In fact, a lot of them were pretty mid to borderline unplayable, but to me, that was part of the charm. You never knew what you were going to get. Maybe you'd find a game that you just absolutely fell in love with, or maybe you'd find one that was just simply unplayable. Either way, it made browsing Flash games feel like you're some sort of pioneer testing out what worked and what didn't. So obviously, Adobe Flash games were incredibly popular. So what the heck happened? How was something that was so integral to early internet culture just disappear off the face of the web? Well, while Flash games dominated the 2000s and early 2010s, they began to lose steam for a few different reasons. First, mobile gaming. The iPhone released in 2007 with the App Store, which gradually began to fill up with simple, quick-to-play games. These games had a lot of similarity to the browser games, except now you could play them whenever and wherever you wanted. The App Store also allowed developers to price their games or include in-app purchases, which helped increase their revenue. They also could go the free-to-play route with a bajillion ads, as I'm sure we're all familiar with. Soon after, Google introduced their own version of the App Store for their Android phones. This led developers to opt for the rapidly growing mobile audience rather than the traditional PC browser gamer, which was already crowded enough with other Flash games. And clearly, this was working well. A former Flash game developer, King, transitioned one of their Adobe Flash games to the mobile market and found insane success with, of course, Candy Crush Saga. But the real blow to Adobe Flash games came from an open letter dated April 29, 2010. In the letter, Apple co-founder Steve Jobs published an article titled Thoughts on Flash. In the post, he listed his concerns with the Adobe Flash Player and why Apple wouldn't be supporting it on the iPhone. Jobs mentioned the poor performance, the closed proprietary ecosystem that Flash used, the fact that it was wholly owned and controlled by Adobe, that users needed to install an entirely separate plugin in order to use it, and that the software was designed for mouse and keyboard input, which meant that mobile developers would have to put in a lot of extra effort for the iPhone's touch controls. Now, is a lot of this hypocritical, especially coming from Apple? Yes it is. But two things can be true at the same time. Adobe Flash did have some serious security issues, and the performance was pretty hit or miss depending on the game or platform you were playing on. Jobs even went as far as to say Flash was the #1 reason for Apple devices crashing at the time. And in his defense, Adobe had a track record of rolling out platform-specific updates at a snail's pace, if at all. This resulted in a growing frustration from the community, leading developers to switch from Flash to the newer, more secure, better performing open source platform HTML5. Adobe, to its credit, saw the writing on the wall and built a new program that is essentially a spiritual successor to Flash called Adobe Animate, which utilizes HTML5, but it is yet to reach the same level of success as the original recipe Adobe Flash Player. So basically, at this point, Adobe Flash was destined to fall behind in terms of game development. It was a fantastic tool in the early days of the internet, but with how rapidly technology was changing, Adobe would have to commit some serious resources to this platform, and to them, the juice just didn't seem to be worth the squeeze. In 2017, Adobe announced that they would be sunsetting Adobe Flash on December 31st, 2020. With the end-of-life announcement, many browsers began warning users about Adobe Flash content or blocking that content entirely. By January of 2021, Adobe Flash had been wiped from all major browsers and was blocked unconditionally without any capability to unlock it. On top of that, the Flash program has a Flash execution software with a built-in kill switch that will activate if the program is used after January of 2021. But then to really seal the deal, Windows released an update that removes the Flash player from all Windows systems. Pretty intense stuff, I know. So yeah, Adobe Flash games are officially dead. Or are they? The shutting down of Adobe Flash has reinforced the belief that video game preservation is critical to the industry's history. Sure, a lot of these games were pretty bad, but a handful of them were incredible and deserve to be remembered. There have been efforts to preserve some of those games through emulation. Flashpoint Archive, for example, has reportedly collected more than 160,000 Flash games. And Congregate, one of the largest Flash game websites, is working with the Strong Museum of Play to preserve some of their titles. Also, the emergence of .io games have done a decent job of showcasing what Flash games used to be. Maybe not as good as the OG Flash games, but that's completely subjective. So even though Flash games are technically dead and gone, their legacy lives on. In fact, Flash games are considered an important factor in the emergence of indie games. When Flash games rose to the top, the video game industry was basically just AAA titles, games with massive budgets made by larger studios with multiple people working on the project. Just like a lot of modern AAA games, studios wouldn't want to take risks or experiment with these games because of the costs. But because of Adobe Flash, up-and-coming developers could dip their toe into the water of video game creation and share their weird, crazy, fun games for millions of others to enjoy. Seriously, a lot of great stuff came around because of Adobe Flash. Castle Crashers, Super Meat Boy, Celeste, and so many more. Who knows where the gaming industry would be today without the success of Adobe Flash Player? Hopefully, we can find a way to preserve all of these legendary games, and hey, maybe some other new tool with a low barrier for entry will emerge that can help usher in the next generation of indie developers. Until then, I want to hear from you guys. Did you ever play any Adobe Flash games? What were some of your favorites? Are there any that you still play today, like Kingdom Rush? I'd love to hear all of your thoughts down below in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It, of course, means a lot. I appreciate you guys as always, and I'll catch you in the next one.